In a bright sunny morning, Allison Carter stood in her kitchen, gently preparing breakfast for her family. Outside the kitchen window, the peaceful town basked in the fresh morning light, with tidy streets, tree-lined yards, and neighbors exchanging friendly greetings, all contributing to a warm and serene picture of life. Allison always felt that she was the luckiest person in the world because she had a family filled with love and warmth. Her husband, Lucas Carter, was not only a successful entrepreneur, but also humble and charming. Their marriage had long been regarded as a model by everyone in town, with people admiring this seemingly perfect couple. Their two adorable children added boundless energy to the household, and their innocent smiles filled every corner of their home with joy and hope. Lucas was a thriving businessman in the town, hurrying between various meetings and business negotiations each day. Although he was busy with work, he always managed to return home on time, a faint smile playing on his lips as he joined Allison and the children for a warm dinner. On ordinary days, he patiently helped the children with their homework and whispered gentle words to Allison about life, making every corner of the house radiate warmth and reassurance. However, gradually, an unseen crack began to form in this peaceful, happy life. From one day onward, Lucas's behavior started to change. The caring look he once had became fleeting, and every evening, as night fell, he would return later than usual, leaving Allison waiting alone under the dim streetlights. What made her even more suspicious was that his mobile phone had become like an extension of his body, clutched tightly in his hand at all times, whether at home or out. Whenever Allison tried to converse with him, he would always use being busy as an excuse, or he would lower his head to stare intently at his phone screen, his tone indifferent and his expression distant. The smile that once warmed her heart had gradually been replaced by silence and detachment. Unbeknownst to anyone, beneath this seemingly calm life, a hidden undercurrent was silently surging. Allison couldn't help but wonder what had caused Lucas to behave so strangely. Perhaps it was merely work stress, or was there some unspeakable secret lurking beneath the surface? These doubts, like tiny seeds, quietly took root and began to grow in her heart. Meanwhile, rumors in the small town started to spread, yet no one would have guessed that such a heartbreaking mystery lay hidden within this seemingly harmonious family. Dear viewers, if you're curious about the secrets hidden beneath this calm facade, please click subscribe to our channel and stay tuned as we unravel the gripping twists of this story. Let us witness together how this seemingly perfect happiness is destined to crumble. Lately, Allison couldn't shake the feeling that an invisible pressure was filling the air. What had once been a peaceful and warm life now seemed to be subtly changing. At first, she only vaguely noticed that Lucas's behavior was becoming unusual. He always left in a hurry and returned much later than usual. Whenever the night grew quiet, she would sit by the window alone, staring at the dim streetlights and wondering if she was just overthinking. She tried hard to convince herself not to jump to conclusions. After all, a busy work schedule and overwhelming stress could easily make anyone seem a bit distracted. One weekend afternoon, while having coffee with her close friend Lisa, Allison was suddenly spoken to in a somber tone. "Have you noticed that Lucas has been going to places you're not familiar with lately? A few days ago, I accidentally overheard him talking to a stranger in a tone that was oddly intimate." Lisa's words hit Allison like a silent bomb, sending ripples through her heart. She began to reconsider all the subtle changes she had observed, the fleeting, evasive look in Lucas's eyes when he came home, his constant grip on his phone, and even his apparent distraction when spending time with the family. Then, on one particularly heavy day, while organizing her wardrobe, Allison stumbled upon one of Lucas's shirts. The shirt still carried a faint scent of perfume, but it was entirely different from the fragrance she knew Lucas usually wore. Instead, it exuded an unfamiliar and mysterious aroma. Leaning in closer, she inhaled deeply, and a surge of uneasy anxiety rose within her. That scent seemed to be whispering secrets she had never known, and her heart began to race uncontrollably. That evening, Lucas returned home as usual. The living room was bathed in warm light, and the children played joyfully as if nothing had changed. Yet when faced with Allison's questioning gaze, Lucas appeared unusually tense. Gathering her courage, Allison gently asked, "Dear, did something unusual happen today? I noticed a different perfume scent on your shirt." Before she could finish her sentence, Lucas's expression turned rigid. He hastily waved off her concern, saying, "It's nothing, just a little gift from a friend. You shouldn't worry about it." However, his tone was unmistakably dismissive and impatient, and it soon shifted to a cold, almost irritated manner. Allison looked at him with eyes filled with disappointment and confusion, feeling that such a response was not befitting a mature man. In the following days, Lucas's mood became even more erratic. Every time Allison casually mentioned the shirt incident, he would respond with a curt, dismissive tone. On one late night, when Allison softly brought up the matter once more, Lucas suddenly raised his voice, his face flushed with anger, causing the entire room's atmosphere to freeze over. In that moment, Allison felt the weight of uncertainty grow heavier in her heart. The once warm and secure haven of their home now seemed to be gradually falling apart. Lying in bed that night, tossing and turning, Allison's mind replayed Lisa's warning, the mysterious scent of the perfume, and Lucas's vague answers over and over. Although she tried to reassure herself not to overthink, her intuition whispered relentlessly that things were not as simple as they appeared. On that quiet, endless night, an inaudible alarm bell rang deep within her, foretelling that more unpredictable waves were silently approaching. Night had deepened, and the entire house was shrouded in a hushed silence. In that stillness, Allison's mounting unease had reached its breaking point. She felt as though her intuition was persistently warning her that the truth was far more complex than it appeared. Finally, on a night when no one else was around, she quietly rose from bed, slipped into the study, and retrieved the phone that was usually set aside without much thought. With trembling fingers, she unlocked the screen, dreading that what she might see would shatter her world completely. On the phone screen, a series of messages scrolled by, messages filled with ambiguous and flirtatious words. They were sent by a woman named Lydia, whose gentle yet suggestive language hinted at secret affection towards Lucas. Every line dripped with tender intimacies, and as Allison read on, her heart sank with each word. At first she had thought these might merely be playful flirtations, but as she continued to scroll, more explicit details emerged. Affectionate nicknames, veiled references to secret meetings, and vague plans for future encounters that painted a picture of a hidden relationship too undeniable to ignore. Just as Allison was struggling to piece together her thoughts, she caught sight of a familiar number in the top corner of the screen. In that instant, she could hardly believe her eyes. The number belonged to her stepmother, Sarah Morgan. The realization hit her like a tidal wave. The person she had always regarded as family, someone who had offered warmth and guidance, was now entangled in this clandestine affair with Lucas. In that heart-stopping moment, everything she had once trusted crumbled. It wasn't simply a case of innocent flirtation. This was a deep betrayal that left her reeling, unable to accept that her stepmother and her husband could share such intimacy. In the midst of shock and overwhelming grief, Allison forced herself to remain composed, knowing that raw emotion alone would not change what was unfolding. Determined to unearth more of the hidden truth, she resolved to conduct her own discreet investigation. Over the next few days, she meticulously observed every subtle irregularity in her home. She carefully examined Lucas's belongings and noticed that his phone repeatedly received mysterious, intimate messages, each one hinting at secret rendezvous. Every time she tried to piece together the puzzle, that all-too-familiar phone number would appear again, silently echoing the secret that was being concealed. What chilled her even more were the moments when, by chance, she caught glimpses of Lucas and Sarah in the house. In one such instance, she saw them in a quiet corner of the living room, engaged in a hushed conversation, their whispers so soft that it almost seemed as though the walls themselves were listening. For a fleeting moment, she witnessed a subtle yet unmistakable display of intimacy, a touch, a glance, that confirmed her worst suspicions. These silent encounters were irrefutable evidence. Lucas and Sarah's relationship was deeper and more frequent than she had ever imagined, and it had been unfolding right under her nose, within the very walls of her own home. Late into the night, as Allison sat alone in the dark, every detail replayed in her mind, like a haunting melody. Overwhelmed by a mix of sorrow and anger, she realized that her life would never return to the way it once was. The cold evidence on the phone had mercilessly exposed a wound that could no longer be ignored. With a heavy heart, she resolved to record every piece of evidence, determined to uncover the full extent of the betrayal hidden beneath the surface of her family's once perfect life. All of Allison's world had already crumbled, but she knew that anger alone would change nothing. She had to remain calm and find irrefutable evidence to expose the truth once and for all. Late at night, Allison sat in her study, her eyes fixed intently on the laptop before her. She had installed hidden cameras in several corners of her home, especially in the living room and by the staircase, where Lucas and Sarah often conversed. Carefully, she blended the cameras seamlessly into the decor to ensure they went unnoticed. At the same time, she contacted an experienced private detective to secretly follow Lucas. The detective soon began tracking his every move, recording each instance when he left the house. Every evening, as darkness settled in, Allison would eagerly review the detective's reports, analyzing every detail with meticulous care. Day by day, the evidence accumulated. The cameras captured Lucas's uneasy expression as he answered mysterious phone calls. They recorded Sarah sneaking in and out of the living room while Allison was away, and they even caught a glimpse of the unmistakable look of complicity exchanged between the two. The photos and videos provided by the detective further revealed details of their meetings outside the house: a high-end restaurant, a secluded apartment, and even a resort where Allison had once accompanied Lucas. Faced with the mounting evidence, Allison's heart grew colder with each passing day. Yet she maintained her outward composure, continuing to play the role of the gentle and caring wife, smiling as she sent the children off to school each morning, tenderly asking Lucas about his day at dinner. Deep down, however, she knew she was no longer the naive woman she once was. She was waiting patiently for the perfect moment to let all the lies come crashing down. The night was heavy with darkness, and the moonlight silently bathed the quiet courtyard. That evening, Allison had long decided that it was time to uncover the truth hidden beneath the facade. She deliberately pretended to rush out, donning a hat and a coat as she hurriedly left the house. In reality, she had already set up a hidden observation point in a secluded corner just outside the door, where, under the dim glow of streetlights, she silently watched every movement inside her home. Standing quietly before the window of the house opposite, Allison peered through its half-closed curtain and witnessed a scene that made her heart ache unbearably. In the living room, Lucas and Sarah were nestled together on the sofa, whispering softly to each other. In the warm glow of the lamp, their figures appeared exceptionally intimate, as if they had forgotten all their responsibilities and inhibitions. In that moment, Allison felt as though she could hear her own heart come to a sudden stop. Anger and sorrow intertwined within her, leaving her almost unable to stand. Without a moment's hesitation, Allison burst out from her hiding place, forcefully pushing open the front door and storming into the living room. Her tear-stained eyes were filled with questions and seething anger as she demanded, in a trembling yet resolute voice, "Lucas, "Sarah, what exactly are you doing?" Her sudden accusation struck like a bolt of lightning, freezing the atmosphere in the living room. Both Lucas and Sarah were momentarily stunned, their faces etched with disbelief and panic. A flash of terror and embarrassment crossed Lucas's eyes before quickly transforming into fiery anger. His face turned a deep shade of blue, as if the tenderness that once shone in him had vanished entirely, replaced by an overwhelming fury. "How did you find out about this?" he roared, his voice rising with evident shouting and reproach. Meanwhile, Sarah looked utterly lost, her lips pressed tightly together, her eyes darting away as though desperately trying to hide a secret. Standing her ground, Allison's tears continued to fall, yet she showed no sign of backing down. Clenching her lips to suppress the torrent of emotions within her, she pressed on, "Did you really think I wouldn't find out? You can't hide all of this forever." Her words were soaked in pain and despair, yet they resonated even more with the anger of betrayal. Seeing this, Lucas's rage exploded. He stepped closer to Allison, his voice low and menacing as he threatened, "Enough! Do you even understand what family is or what should be done?" The shouting echoed fiercely throughout the living room, as if every corner bore witness to the irreversible fracture of trust. At the height of the heated argument, Lucas could no longer contain the uncontrollable rage boiling within him. With trembling and hurried hands, he suddenly reached out and gripped Allison's neck. In that frozen moment, the entire world seemed to come to a standstill, with only the clashing of their breaths filling the air. Allison felt a crushing pressure in her chest, and her vision blurred, yet she struggled and cried out, with every ounce of strength she had, as if trying to resist the overwhelming force. The sounds of the quarrel and desperate cries intertwined, and with the heavy atmosphere inside the room, all the cherished memories seemed to dissolve into nothingness in an instant. Outside, the moonlight remained serene, yet it could do nothing to soothe the storm raging within the house. On that fateful night, all trust, warmth, and lies crumbled in a single devastating moment, leaving behind nothing but endless sorrow and an indelible mark of betrayal. The following morning, a neighbor noticed something amiss at the house and hurriedly called the police. When officers arrived at the scene, they were shocked to discover Allison's cold, lifeless body in the living room. Her life had long been extinguished. The scattered belongings and the oppressive silence in the house silently testified to a tragic truth. During the investigation, the police retrieved footage from the hidden cameras installed by Allison in her home. The video clearly captured the violent events of that fateful night. After a fierce argument, Lucas lost control and strangled Allison, causing her to collapse as she suffocated. With the overwhelming evidence, Lucas was swiftly apprehended. At the trial, every piece of evidence was presented, and the court impartially delivered its verdict. Lucas was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. After the case was made public, the children, having lost their only source of comfort, became the deepest scar of this tragic incident with their helpless and lonely figures. The entire community was left in shock, pondering a heavy question. When the trust and love within a family are betrayed, who can escape the fate of tragedy?